On Sunday, December 14th, just a little bit more than a week ago, a grisly discovery was made in the Brentwood mansion of Rob and Michele Reiner. In the week or so, a little bit more than a week, since that discovery, uh, there's been speculation and rumor circling around the internet out of a town that is notoriously full of speculation and rumor. Tonight, we're going to go over what we know happened and all the things that we don't know happened. Stick with me. This video contains mature themes and discussions intended only for adult audiences. Viewer discretion is advised. Well, hello there, my friend, and welcome back to another True Crime Conversation with me, Gavin Fish. I'm so glad you are joining me wherever you're joining me from. And speaking of which, please be sure to tell me in the live chat or in the chat below where you're tuning in from. I'd love to know where you're joining me from. Of course, tonight we are talking about the murder of Hollywood icons, Rob Reiner and Michele Singer Reiner. Their son, Nick Reiner, has been charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder in the stabbing or slashing deaths of his parents. Now, we don't know if it was a stabbing death or a slashing death. We do know that his parents died of sharp force injuries. Now, the Reiners' 2 other children put out, as you guys know, a statement asking for any speculation to be tempered with compassion and humanity. And I thought that that was a, what is the word I want to use? It was such a emotionally and socially mature way of making that statement. They know that many of us around the world are going to speculate about what happened to their parents in a very difficult time for them. They didn't say don't speculate. They just said please temper it with humanity and with compassion. And so that's what we're trying to do here on this channel. This is a case of great interest. It is a case where we are going to, I think, learn a lot, one, about the legal system, but also about the mental health care system here in the United States and, what decisions we make as a society. Sometimes what are the effects of those decisions on families? And they could be famous families like the Reiners, or they could be everyday families like mine. But I found an article today that I thought did a very good job of explaining where we are in this case, what we know and what we don't know. But before we jump into that, I have a couple of pieces of audio from Mr. Nick Reiner that I would like to have a listen to. It comes from a podcast back in 2015. Before I do, though, let's just make sure that I can see where you guys, if you put GF in your comment, it's going to help me find your comments. Let me just make sure that my system is working here. I want to make sure that, yeah, there we go. Okay. So we've got Richmond, Virginia. We got Birmingham, Alabama, Northern California, where the girls are warm. Delray Beach, Florida. Northern California, by the way, is my home country. Cambridge, Ohio. Arkansas. Oceanside, California. Jacksonville, Florida. Palm Harbor, Florida. Hildebrand, North Carolina. Rankin County, Mississippi. Holy cow, you guys are... I think we've got some new places here. Great Bend, Indiana. Sharkey with South Lake Tahoe is in the house. I'm Goddess 1950 from Erie, PA. So glad to see you too. We got Eastern Kentucky back in the house. Northwest New Jersey. Wangaratta, Australia. South Carolina. Happy holidays from Suriname or South America. Where is that? I don't know. Sierra Nevada foothills, all again in my in my home area, Hudson, Florida. Thank you so much and we got them all over the place. Thanks for checking in, guys. Okay. What I want to show you, or what I want us to listen to, are two clips, each of them about a minute and a half long, of Mr. Reiner, whose photo you're seeing on the screen right now. These photos are a couple years old. I need to load up my system with some of the later photos where he's kind of looking like he is in crisis. That's what he looks like. But let's have a listen. This came from the Dopey podcast in 2015. He's talking about, and the reason I think this is important is because we believe that Mr. Nick Reiner is going to claim some sort of insanity defense, some sort of not guilty by reason of legal insanity. And the burden on the defense is to prove that beyond a preponderance of the evidence for the jury to consider. But one little piece of that, one element of that, is credibility. And so I want to play these two clips from the Dopey podcast. Here we go.
How'd you get Wellbutrin? Did it cop it on the street?
The way I got Wellbutrin is actually really fun. I was at Alena Lodge, and I don't know if I told this last week, but they refused to give me meds. So to prove I was crazy, because they were like, you don't need any meds.
Yeah, they're pretty strict.
To prove I was crazy? So he had to use his noggin, his little nubber, to figure out a way. If anything, it proves that a person is not crazy to be able to reason through a problem like that, to apply logic to a problem and find a solution. Let me start it again. Here we go.
How'd you get Wellbutrin? Did it cop it on the street?
The way I got Wellbutrin is actually really fun. I was at Alena Lodge, and I don't know if I told this last week, but they refused to give me meds. So to prove I was crazy, because they were like, you don't need any meds.
Yeah,
and I was
pretty
like freaking
strict
out. And I was like, you don't think I need meds? And they're like, yeah, we think you're just all up to an act here, and this is all just fake. And I said, okay. And then I went back to, the Roost. Remember the Roost?
No.
That's what they called the little barracks.
Okay.
And I was like, how do I show these mother and I'm crazy.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'll throw a rock through the window.
Yeah.
So I started and they have this thing there that they love. That little church. It's not a church really.
Yeah.
It's like
they were building that when I was there.
It's like a meeting room that is like has these big glass windows, and they loved it, and they always were like, Mrs. Delaney was here when they built this, and I hated that whole thing. So I took a rock, and I started on the path, and I was going up this hill, and my friend Peter's like, where are you going, man? And I was like, can't talk right now, I just got to do this. Yeah. And I went and I threw the rock through the window, and some woman saw me, and she ratted on me, and then they put me on Wellbutrin.
So, this is the kind of stuff. This is the kind of stuff that's going to come up, especially in discovery. Now, I don't know that a jury will get the benefit of listening to something like this. I don't know the ins and outs of the law, and we know that Mr. Nick Reiner has a very good criminal defense attorney in the person of Alan Jackson. But if a jury starts to hear stuff like this, then his credibility is going to go out the window. And this is the thing, guys. Like, it's not like I have some kind of like long experience in criminal enterprise. But when I was talking with, I remember, for example, Danielle Winkowski. Danielle Winkowski is the sister of Amanda Winkowski. If you go to my website, gavinfish.com, it's always linked down below, and go to the cases page. And if you don't know this case, the case of Amanda Winkowski, this is one that you should familiarize yourself with. But when I was talking with Danielle, she talked about all of the little things that she and Amanda would do in order to feed their habit. They had to be very smart, and they were smart little criminals in order to be able to raise the money in order to feed their habit, right? And this audio that we're listening to, that we just heard of Nick Reiner, this comes, in my opinion, in my lay opinion, I should say, from years of meticulously working and working the system, pulling the wool over the eyes of people. What would my wife call it? She would call it, I'm searching for the word and I'm not finding it, but it's just, he has honed the craft of manipulating. That is the word that I'm looking for, of manipulation of other people in order to get his way. And if the prosecution can show to a jury that this is who Mr. Nick Reiner is, he is a manipulator. He is smart. He's able to control the actions of other people through his own actions, his own thoughts, then he's going to have a real hard time with an insanity defense, I think. And it'd probably be better for him to plead rather than take it to a jury. Okay, that was clip number 1. Clip number 2, this is just one that talks about his dad helping him through a bad drug experience. Here we go.
So basically, I was like, if I'm alone, any number of terrible things can happen. It's best for someone to know about this. And my parents had already been through a long process of in and out of rehabs with me. So, you know, like they'd see me do coke and heroin. So I didn't feel like saying I was on acid would be too big of a deal. So I walked into my parents' room. The lights were off. They were asleep. And I said, guys, I have something to tell you. And they're like, whoa, what is it? And I was like, I took acid tonight. My mom was like, oh, I can't deal with this. This. I'm going to bed. And she like ran downstairs and went and slept on the couch. And then I'm with my dad and I'm lying in bed, tripping my off, thinking about the Cleveland House of Horrors. And he's like, calm down, buddy. It's okay.
What's really sad about this is the way that he thinks this is funny. And this is an indication to me anyway that he was never what's penitent? Is that the right word, right? Like he knew that he was an addict, and it doesn't seem like he recognized the calamity that was in the wake of Hurricane Nick Reiner. Like, it's not funny. I'm going to back it up just a little bit more.
I'm lying in bed, tripping my off, thinking about the Cleveland House of Horrors. And he's like, calm down, buddy. It's okay. I used to do this in the 60s. You'll calm down eventually. It won't be forever. And I was just trying to and he just talked me down for 8 hours straight.
That's really sweet.
Acid. And they never grilled me for it. They never, and it just sort of was
I think if I were parents and my kid came and volunteered information like that's a really good way they handled it. Instead of being punitive, you know what I mean? They just were helpful.
Yeah.
So you sat in you were laying in bed. Were you in the same room as your dad, or?
Yeah, we were lying side by side on a bed.
Oh my god!
Looking up at the ceiling while he told me about the 60s.
Oh my god, that's wild, dude.
Yeah, and Mooney is saying, I kind of want the jury to hear these things too. Let me go back. They need both sides to make an informed decision, and that is a very good way of thinking about that, Mooney, because what we want out of this is justice, right? If Nick Reiner was in some kind of temporary insane state, some kind of psychosis, something like that, we definitely want him to, I'm talking societally, and I'm also talking for myself. I want him to get help that he needs, and that might be institutionalizing him for the rest of his life. I would hate it if he was found guilty but not insane, if he was indeed insane, because that means that he wouldn't get the help that he would need. A similar token, if he's just manipulating the system, that he's not criminally insane, he wasn't insane in that moment, then I want him locked away in, and I'm not a prison justice kind of guy, but I don't want him living in Shangri-La the rest of his life. We're going to talk a little bit about that, by the way. I have a couple things that I want to read for you guys. We're going to talk about money here in just a bit. But before we do, let's go over, join me, if you will, over on the old Acrobat, which for this article coming from the Wrap, I thought that this was an article that does temper with compassion and humanity the speculation that all of us are, or many of us are engaging in, all of us are probably feeling. I should probably only speak for myself instead of other people, but I think that this article is really well done, and it's pretty brief. I just want to go through it a little here, okay? Written by Josh Dickey in the Wrap, titled "What We Know 1 Week After the Reiners' Murder and Conan O'Brien's Christmas Party and Much We Don't." By the way, I'm hoping that Conan O'Brien does address publicly at least the Reiner's death. He does talk about stuff like this on his podcast, and I listen to his podcast pretty religiously. I really enjoy it. The last one that came out was with James L. Brooks, and I think that it was recorded probably weeks and weeks and weeks ago. I don't know when he'll speak publicly. I think that eventually he will. It could be years from now. But anyway, written by Josh Dickey from the Wrap. Push the right button, Gavin. All right, a thick fog has settled around reports out of Conan O'Brien's December 13th holiday party, the night before Rob and Michele Reiner were found dead in their Brentwood home, and days before their son Nick was charged in their murder. Here's what we know for certain. Rob Reiner, his wife Michele Singer Reiner, and their 32-year-old son Nick attended. At some point, as they mingled and circulated around well-dressed partygoers, Nick's appearance, demeanor, and social intrusions began to gain attention, including a moment when he interrupted SNL alum Bill Hader and O'Brien mid-conversation. I'd only read that it was Hader. I didn't know that it was Hader and O'Brien talking. Here's what we don't know for certain. Anything else you may have read or heard. And I think that is really, really well written. At least 9 news outlets with different unnamed sources reported last week that an altercation took place between Nick and his parents. They include TMZ, who cited family sources, People, who cited multiple sources at the party, the LA Times, who cited family friends, the New York Times, who cited 2 attendees, CBS News, who cited sources at the party, the New York Post, who cited pals and sources, The Hollywood Reporter, sources not characterized, Rolling Stone, who cited sources, and the Daily Mail, who cited multiple attendees. And we've talked about the problem. And listen, I have shared many of these articles with you here on this channel. And my issue with all of them is unnamed sources. Now, more than one source is better than one unnamed source, but unnamed sources, this is a plague that has just gone through the journalism profession. It's a plague. But anyway, they should have editors that are like, nope, but their editors are like, yeah, let's do it. I think that has to do a lot with, this is a bit of a tangent, but I think it has a lot to do with the competition for clicks and eyeballs. But anyway, and man, okay, Gavin, tangent, goodness. Yes, this is a tangent, but I have to say that I am guilty of it in my day job as a reporter. I have submitted sometimes completed articles, but many times it's like, hey, I'm talking with my editors about, I've got this source. I can put it into I trust him or her. I can put it into my story. Well, who are they? What did they say? Can we corroborate? And my editors will go, no way. We're not touching that with a 10-foot pole. And on my end of things, I have been really frustrated about it. Probably because I also want to compete in our little corner of the world for those same clicks and eyeballs. But anyway, it's a plague, and I'm not immune to it. Okay, continuing his article where he's talking about anything else we may have read or heard other than, interrupting Hayter and O'Brien. We don't know. He goes, did I go to the right place? Yes. Each has slightly different details with a wide range of how the incident is described, from an awkward and uncomfortable exchange, Rolling Stone, to a loud argument, shouting match, or massive blow up, People, TMZ, New York Times, New York Post. None suggests there was any kind of physical exchange. Not one person who was at the party, a highly private affair at O'Brien's home in the Pacific Palisades, has spoken on the record. Besides O'Brien and the Reiners, only Hayter and Jane Fonda have been named as being there, and neither of them has spoken publicly or even confirmed their attendance. Then on Friday, the Wrap, which is the publication that we're reading here, reported that there was no blow-up, citing a Hollywood executive who was there. Quote, "That's bull S," the executive told the Wrap, speaking specifically of the Daily Mail report Friday that O'Brien himself talked guests out of calling police over the alleged Reiner fight. The executive, of course, who also spoke on condition of anonymity, confirmed that Nick Reiner was acting erratically around the A-list crowd, but denied any major confrontation, telling the Wrap, quote, "I said to Conan the next day, I said, what is all this stuff about a fight?" He said, "I saw no fight." At least they're using quotes here. It's still an unnamed source characterized as an executive, a Hollywood executive. Okay, continuing the article. The executive said Nick Reiner was, in fact, walking around making people feel uncomfortable, eavesdropping on conversations, and that kind of thing. But the executive was vehement that O'Brien and guests did not witness a shouting match between Rob and Nick Reiner, adding, quote, "If there had been a big fight with the Reiners, there were 1 million people there I knew. No one mentioned it to me." And yeah, let's continue. The Wrap's reporting echoed the New York Times earlier last week, citing a family friend, also reported that stories of a confrontation at the holiday gathering were, quote, "overblown." Even reports of the Reiners' comings and goings have been divergent. Initial reports had it that the Reiners left immediately after the argument, but the Times source disputed that, saying the family had, quote, "grown used to," close quote, Nick's unusual behavior and would not have flinched. Rolling Stone reported that the Reiners brought Nick along to, quote, "keep an eye on him," close quote, while People reported that the family was, quote, "never worried," close quote, that Nick would turn violent and were settled into his recent return home. Okay, now this is a great paragraph here, okay? Let me highlight it. This is a great paragraph. Hollywood has always been quick to gossip and slow to publicly tear down its own. Add in the factors of an embarrassing incident at an elite, invite-only party where extreme discretion is silently baked into the invitation, and the unspeakable tragedy for one of the town's most beloved family patriarchs. Is it any wonder that this game of telephone has overloaded the circuits? You guys remember the game of telephone? For those of you maybe outside of the United States, maybe you have something like this. Maybe it's just called something different where you are. The game of telephone is something that we played as little children, sometimes as families, sometimes in like classroom settings, where one person would whisper in the ear one time a phrase, they would tell that person something, but they would only tell it one time. That person had to listen to what they heard and then go to the next person in line and whisper that in their ear one time. And so on it would go until you got to the last person. And then once the last person had heard what the previous person has said, they announced to the group what it was that they heard. And I don't think it ever in my life came back to being even closely resembling what the first person said. So that's what he's saying. Like, come on, with all of this, is it any wonder that this game of telephone overloaded the circuits? It's possible that more details from the party will come forth at trial, and this is very interesting. Prosecutors looking to establish a timeline and motive to convict Nick Reiner of the double murder of his parents could subpoena the invite list and call for live testimony from any number of attendees, including O'Brien himself. At this rate, with Hollywood carefully circling the wagons around the Reiner murders, they shouldn't expect any volunteers. I agree. But they will probably get plenty of witnesses. On the other hand, the Los Angeles County District Attorney would appear to have no problem getting a conviction without ever making a single call from the O'Brien party invite list. The physical evidence alone will be overwhelming, with materials from the crime scene itself, blood-stained linens recovered at the hotel room to which Nick Reiner fled the night of the murders, which we may or may not know to be true, because that was reported, well, by TMZ and others from interviews with like hotel staff. Untold spools of security footage and quite possibly a confession of some kind on their evidence sheet. And that is possible. There might be. We don't know. Nick Reiner, 32, was formally charged Tuesday with 2 counts of first-degree murder after being arrested on Sunday as the main suspect in his parents' deaths, which were ruled later in the week as homicide by stabbing. That is incorrect. They were not ruled as homicide by stabbing. They were ruled as homicide by sharp force injuries. That may include stabbing. That may include slashing. It may include scraping. There are so many things that could be sharp force injuries. I think it's probably okay to assume that some of it was stabbing, but we want to be precise in our language here, right? They're homicide by sharp force injuries. The charges came 2 days, continuing the article, after he was picked up in Exposition Park near the USC campus, hours after Rob and Michele were found by their daughter, Romy, stabbed to death in their Brentwood home. Excuse me a moment. Goodness sake. I'm not boring myself. It's been a long day. And I'm an old man, guys. I turned 50 this year, okay? I'm an old man. You just gotta deal with my old man weirdness. Okay, Reiner's charges carry a possible sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole, while a decision regarding the death penalty is still pending, DA Nathan Hochman said. Nick made his first appearance in court on Wednesday, where he spoke only once, responding, "Yes, Your Honor," before the arraignment hearing was postponed to January 7th. A courtroom sketch showed Nick appearing in a blue jail-issued suicide prevention vest. These are also known as turtle suits. They are a thick, padded, and quilted smock that kind of goes over your head and has Velcro, usually over one shoulder that closes the shoulder, and then there's Velcro along the waist. And basically, it makes it very, very unlikely that anybody would be able to use that to harm themselves, as opposed to if they had scrubs that they could tear into strips and tie together and make a rope and stuff like that, right? So he was wearing the turtle suit in court, though we didn't get photos of it. We only saw a courtroom sketch. Nick's attorney, Alan Jackson, asked the public on Wednesday to allow the legal process to unfold with restraint and with dignity. Unfortunately, for Mr. Jackson's client, the Reiners, Rob and Michele Reiner, were shown neither restraint nor dignity. So I mean, while I want to temper our speculation with humanity and with compassion, I respectfully will tell Mr. Jackson to kick rocks on his request. There are very, very complex and serious issues, continues the quote from Mr. Jackson, that are associated with this case. Things need to be thoroughly but very carefully dealt with and examined and analyzed. Nick Reiner is currently being held without bail pending his arraignment, which again is scheduled for January 7th. Now, let's, oh my goodness, look who is joining us. Kenny B. Film. This is one of my very favorite people in the world. This is one of my very favorite people in the world from my hometown. Good to see you, Kenny B. Let's see what we got as far as some comments. I just want to get to you guys. Hey, 21 months from Mooney. Thank you. Thank you, Mooney, for your continued support. Almost 2 years, coming up on 2 years. Emmy's asking, sorry, but what is a tangent? When I talk about tangents, well, a tangent is an intersecting line that runs, I don't know the exact, man, it's been so long since calculus, but it's like if I have a circle, say I have a circle, a line may touch the circle, but it does not go through the circle. That is a tangent in mathematics. That's a horrible, by the way, definition. But a tangent to what we use in our English parlance is basically, hey, this is just really loosely connected. I'm really just kind of going off script here. That's what a tangent is, Amy. Cassie says, Gavin, sorry if I missed it. I came in late, but when are these interviews from? Was Nick supposed to be clean as he's laughing about his exploits? Yeah. I believe it was 2015, maybe 2016. I don't know exactly, but I believe it was 2015. Content Angel says we don't do unnamed sources in radio. That's good. That is good stuff. See if there's anything else where you guys put me put GF in the comment. Cooler by the Lake. Gavin, being intoxicated is not a defense. Regardless of any mental illness, if he was high at the time, it shouldn't constitute a valid defense. I think you're right in many cases. Intoxication is not a valid defense. But I'm wondering the complication, Alan Jackson talked about it's there are lots of complicated legal doctrines to go through, right? Got to navigate our way through this. That's me paraphrasing Mr. Jackson, but I don't know that that's necessarily true for somebody who is diagnosed with some kind of mental illness. I don't know. I mean, in a case that I talked to you guys about last week out here in Western Pennsylvania that I covered for my day job, the court did allow the defense to use a legal insanity defense for a guy who is diagnosed as a schizophrenic who happened to be doing pot. So he was probably high at the time that he murdered this poor man out here in Western Pennsylvania. But the court did allow the insanity defense because he had a 20-year schizophrenia history. And he had several psychotic, I would call them psychotic breaks leading up to the crime over the few days leading up to the crime. So I don't know. I think you're right in spirit. But as every lawyer I've ever talked to about any time I've asked a question of a lawyer, do you know what the answer is? Every single time? Guys, without fail, if you ask a lawyer a legal question, they will always give you this answer. It depends. And that's the way it is. Out of the woods, if someone else drugged him, that could be a defense. Maybe. Yeah. Probably. Possibly. It's just really hard to say, man. It's really, really hard to say. Okay. Last week, as we've been covering this case, several people have brought up if I could just characterize what they have said in the comments, it would be that they don't feel it is just or right or even maybe moral for Nick Reiner to be able to use his parents' money in order to mount his defense. And we talked a little bit about it, but I found a very good article about the so-called Slayer rule from UPI. I really like UPI, by the way. One of our nation's longest standing journalistic organizations. The headline says, Slayer rule likely to play a role in Rob Reiner's family inheritance. Okay, filmmaker Rob Reiner and his wife Michele Singer Reiner. Oh, blah, 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 blah. Okay. The fatal stabbings of filmmaker and actor Rob Reiner and his wife, the photographer and producer Michele Singer Reiner, have sparked widespread grieving. This tragedy, discovered on December 14th, is also increasing the public's interest in what happens when killers could inherit wealth from their victims. That's because Nick Reiner, their son, was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder 4 days after the couple's deaths at their Los Angeles home. So what's the Slayer rule? Give me a second. Wet the old whistle. Okay, all states have some form of Slayer rule that prevents killers from inheriting from their victims. While the rules differ slightly from state to state, they always bar murderers from profiting from their own crimes. Simply put, if you're found guilty of killing someone or plead guilty to their murder, you can't inherit anything from your victim's estate. Now, I know what you're thinking. I don't know what you're thinking. What am I, some kind of psychic? No. I suspect you are thinking, well, wait a minute. This is to bar inheritance after a conviction. Is he still using mommy and daddy's money for his defense? Possibly. Let's keep going. In some states, this might go beyond inheritance and apply to jointly held property, insurance policies, and other kinds of accounts. Most of these Slayer rules, including California's, apply only to felonious and intentional killings, meaning that they don't apply if you accidentally kill someone. Although there doesn't have to be a guilty verdict by a judge or a jury, or a guilty plea from the accused, there must be some finding by a criminal or civil court of an intentional and felonious killing. These rules, known as Slayer rules, have a long history in the United States. They became more prominent following an 1889 murder case in New York State in which a 16-year-old boy poisoned his grandfather to get an inheritance that was written into his grandfather's will. So how often are these Slayer rules invoked? It's hard to say for sure. As far as we know, nobody's tried to keep track. Slayer rules come into play whenever someone who would otherwise inherit assets from an estate is convicted of or found liable for murder, and the slayer is entitled to inherit from the victim. These tragic cases almost always involve murders committed by relatives. Many of the high-profile ones that have been tied to murders that occurred in California. Famous disinherited murderers include Lyle and Eric Menendez. The Californians known as the Californians. Man, Saturday Night Live has ruined the term the Californians for me. Now all I can think of is making a Valley accent, but it doesn't matter. The Californians, known as the Menendez brothers. In 1996, a jury found them guilty of the first-degree murder of their parents, Jose and Marie Louise Kitty Menendez. The Menendez brothers' parents who were killed in 1989 had a fortune that today would be worth more than $35 million. The brothers who became eligible for parole but were denied it in 2025 have been in prison ever since. Once there has been a finding of an intentional and felonious killing, even if the slayer is later released on parole or even if they serve no prison time at all, they would still not inherit anything. Okay? So what can block its application? In the absence of a murder conviction, the slayer rule may not apply. For example, a conviction for a lesser criminal offense such as manslaughter might allow the accused or their lawyers to argue that the killing was unintentional. This exception could be relevant to the prosecution of the Reiner's murders if it were to turn out that Nick Reiner's defense can show that substance abuse or schizophrenia rendered him insane when he allegedly killed his parents at their Los Angeles home. On the other hand, under California law, even if there is no conviction, the probate court administering the murder victim's estate could still separately find that the killing was intentional and felonious. That civil finding would bar the slayer from inheriting without a criminal conviction. The thing that occurs to me is there's obviously an estate, there will be a will and everything like that, but there's probably also a Reiner family trust, which probably owns most of their assets. So I'm curious if beneficiaries of trusts also are included in the so-called slayer rule. Let's see. The probate court administering the murder victim's estate could still separately find that the killing was intentional and felonious. That civil finding would bar a slayer from inheriting without a criminal conviction. Does this only apply to families with big fortunes? Slayer rules apply to anyone who kills one or more of their relatives, whether their victims were rich, poor, or in between. Who will inherit Rob Reiner's and Michele Singer Reiner's wealth? It's too soon for both the public and the family to know who will inherit ultimately from the Reiners. Wills are typically public documents, although the Reiners may also have engaged in other types of estate planning, such as trusts, that do not typically become public records, and celebrities with valuable intellectual property rights, such as copyrights from the Reiners' many film and television properties, tend to establish trusts. Assuming that, like many parents, the Reiners left most of their fortune, which reportedly was worth some $200 million, to their children, including Nick, then California Slayer statute may come into play. The couple had 2 other children together, Romy and Jake. Rob Reiner also had another daughter, Tracy Reiner, whom he adopted after his marriage to his first wife, the actor and filmmaker Penny Marshall. Okay, might the Slayer rule apply to Nick Reiner? It's much too soon to know. It's important to emphasize that the wills and other estate planning documents of Rob and Michele Reiner have not been made public. That means that what Nick Reiner might stand to inherit if the Slayer rule were to prove irrelevant in this case is unknown. Nor with the investigation of the couple's deaths still underway can anyone make any assumptions about Nick's innocence or guilt. As of mid-December 2025, an unnamed source was telling entertainment reporters that Nick Reiner's legal bills were being paid for by the Reiner family. So, yeah, I think that the Reiner family probably are in a pretty difficult position. The whole idea that, we talked about this last week, but it bears repeating. If I had a brother who had a long history of substance abuse and drug addiction and mental health crises over the years, and he were to murder my parents, would I still feel that same fraternal love that I do feel for my brothers, especially knowing his mental illness, and would I want to help him? I mean, I lean yes, but I know many of you, or I should stop saying I know. I'm not some sort of psychic. I suspect many of you would lean no, right? Because that's a very complex and very emotionally charged question. For now, I think that Mr. Jackson and his team are probably just racking up the bills at their whatever many thousands of dollars per hour charge, and the Reiners are going to pay for it That's what I believe is going to happen. Let's go over to your comments here. It looks like we just got a couple before we move into our last segment of the day. Cooler by the Lake 30 says, Nick's siblings may be paying for the defense. Does Nick even have access to his parents' money? I don't know. I believe his siblings are paying for it. Law of the Californians. What are you doing here? Devin? What are you doing here? So yeah, that's the only thing that was in my mind. Let's see there. I thought I saw something. Rants in a robe. Crime and ASMR wrapped into one. You have a voice for it. Well, thank you. I credit my father for my voice, and my mother for my amazing dance capabilities. Anything else coming in? Emmy says, hope you have a wonderful Merry Christmas. Thank you very much. Merry Christmas to you. Happy holidays to everybody. So glad that you have come along. Now, I have a confession to make, and that confession, everybody, is that, man, I'm pushing the wrong buttons, that I just forgot to gather a couple of true crime headlines, but it's okay. We don't have to do all the segments all the time. Instead, why don't we just go ahead and hop into 3 questions, shall we?
It's 3 questions with Gavin Fish.
Pow! By the way, I should say, I completely stole this idea from my buddy, Kenny B. Films. I completely stole it. Because when I was a guest on his show on Quantum Mixtape, you guys, I've shared it over in the tank. Okay, I've shared it over in the tank. I've shared it on all my socials. Search Quantum Mixtape Gavin Fish. You will find the channel, and we had a terrific conversation aboard an interstellar cruiser as we were traveling throughout the galaxy. Anyway, he did 3 questions with me, and I was like, what a terrific idea. So this is what happens in this segment. I solemnly promise that I will answer 3 questions that were submitted by you to the email address on the screen, 3questions@gavinfish.com, 3questions@gavinfish.com. It's spelled out THREE, 3questions@gavinfish.com. Sometimes they're tough questions. Sometimes they are softballs. And I think today is more of the latter. So here we go. Question number 1. And you can send in 1 question. You can send in 3 questions. You can send in 100 questions. If you've already sent in questions, you can send in more questions. There's no rules here. The only rule is that I will answer 3 at a time. Nothing is off the table. You can ask any question you wish, and I will answer them all. I will do so honestly, and I don't know. I can't think of another adjective here. Honestly and completely, I guess. Okay? All right, question number 1. What was your favorite Saturday morning cartoon? I should have looked up which cartoons I watched were Saturday morning cartoons and which ones were like the early morning and afternoon cartoons during the week. And I don't remember which ones. Now, I do remember watching things like Looney Tunes and stuff like that everybody watched, but my favorite cartoons were the battle ones, okay? So that would include Voltron. Now, I was a Voltron lion guy, not a Voltron car guy. Who cares about the cars? It's the lions or nothing. Okay. I was a G.I. Joe fan. I was a He-Man fan. What's another battle cartoon that Robotech? Oh, I loved that stuff. Now, as I grew up and got into high school, I do remember this was an afternoon one. I was full on 18 years old. I had graduated high school, and I was still watching Animaniacs in the afternoon. I loved it. So, yeah, that's me. Question number 2, did you ever flaunt a mullet hairstyle? Well, what an interesting verb. I feel like it puts a qualifier into the question. Did I flaunt one? No. Did I have one? Also, no. I thought they looked stupid. Now, I had friends who had them. I had friends who had magnificent ones. I mean, come on. My high school years were 89 to 93. And boy, were mullets in, especially right there in about 92, right? In 92, I remember the class ahead of me had just had so many guys that had just glorious mullets. But no, I have never rocked one. I have considered, or flaunted one. I have considered when it's time for me to cut my hair to donate it, starting on the top so that I can do a little photo shoot with a mullet, because I've always kind of wanted one, but except back then, I thought they looked ridiculous. Fun fact about Gavin. I have a great nephew. Do you say great nephew or grandnephew? It's my nephew's son who placed in the top 3 in the local mullet competition this past summer. Okay, question number 3. Do you prefer Harrison Ford or Anthony Hopkins movies? Well, see, this is a false choice. I do not prefer one over the other. I prefer both actors' work equally. I mean, Remains the Day? Shadowlands? Come on. That is among the best cinema has to offer. The Indiana Jones franchise? Now, I don't include anything past actually, when it comes to Indiana Jones, there is Raiders of the Lost Ark and there's The Last Crusade. The rest of them don't belong in there. But those 2 movies are amazing. And have you guys seen The Age of Adeline? I'm a softie. I like The Age of Adeline. I am a Harrison Ford guy. Now, this brings up a tangent. I'm not going to play it. I'm gonna. Yes, this brings up a tangent. Because it was just recently that I was in a department store. Yes, a department store in the beautiful town of Jamestown, New York, with my sweetie pie, my snuggly bear, my one and only. And we were there shopping. I've lost a lot of weight and I'm continuing to lose. And we're starting to think, because when I put on this shirt this morning, Kimberly, my sweetie pie, my snuggly bear, my one and only, said, "You're going to wear that dress today? All of my clothes are giant on me." Okay. So we went to the department store to look for clothes and I saw a jacket that I dig. I'm going to show you guys. Okay. You ready? Look at that thing. Just marvel at its amazingness. Let's zoom. Look at that thing. Just look at it. It was velvet. It had that paisley pattern. It had the satin peak lapels. I thought it was the most amazing thing in the world. And Kimberly, the aforementioned sweetie pie snuggly bear one and only, says, "You need to lean away from Elton John and lean into," her words, "Harrison Ford." So you tell me, should I be leaning Harrison Ford or should I be leaning Elton John? Maybe a little of both. Maybe a little of both. You know what? Since we're having fun here, since we're just having fun here, let's make a poll. Let's find out what you guys think. Start a poll. Which direction should Gavin lean? We're going to go Elton John or Harrison Ford. Let's see what you guys think. Let's just see what you think. I'm going to give that a second, okay? Finishing out the old segment. Where am I going? I've got to push the right buttons. Here we go. I don't have any preference over the 2. I think they both have a remarkable remarkable filmology. It's not filmology. What is it called? Filmography. That's what I'm looking for. Now, if you have questions for me, please send them in as often as you'd like, as many as you'd like. Nothing's off the table. 3 questions at gavinfish.com. 3 questions at gavinfish.com. Those are your 3 questions.
It's 3 questions with Gavin Fish.
Pow! All right, let's just check the poll. Let's check the poll before we call it a night. The poll right now says, oh my goodness, Harrison Ford 51%, Elton John 49%. This is a statistical tie, everybody. This is a statistical tie. Let's see your comments. Content Angel says that my sweetie pie, my snuggly bear, my one and only is right. Tracy says that jacket is glorious, right? It is glorious, and I would rock the crap out of it. The Content Angel says I need to listen to her. Mooney says velvet all the way. Tiff Ritter with a super chat saying Elton John is greater than Harrison Ford. Rants in a Robe says Harrison Ford. Vanessa says Ford. Chloe says velvet is okay, pleather is creepy. Yeah, we won't be doing the pleather, but the velvet was amazing, man. It was amazing. Autumn says it's a close one. Sleuth in sandals, it's a difficult choice. Let's see. Harrison Ford says J.E. Criggs. I think it depends, says Galen Gam. I think it would depend on whether you're going for Elton John in one place and Harrison Ford in a more conservative. Yeah, I think it probably depends on where we're making our appearances. I think maybe both, right? I think maybe both. I'm going to just check in. It is currently 50-50 on that poll, and we're going to end it at 51-49 in the direction of Harrison Ford. Thank you guys for playing along with that. Before we go, I just want to remind you of my website, gavinfish.com. There's always a link in the description down below. Lots of case pages like Amanda Winkowski. The homepage is chock full of blog posts and true crime headlines from CrimeCod, my true crime website. You can find different ways to support me. Thank you so much for the live chat tonight, or I'm sorry, for the super chat tonight. Thanks for the live chat too. Those are terrific ways to support me, and bless you all for your support. Hey, I'm going to just take a moment here. We've got a couple extra minutes. On the support me page, there's a send a package thing. Okay. There's a send a package. Now, I don't ask for gifts. It's really more of a place where if you have evidence or documents that you want to send, you can send them there. That's the kind of stuff that I receive there. But if you happen to be the owner of a pair of Ray-Ban Olympian, I think it's the Olympian 2 G15 sunglasses. Yes. Yeah. If you happen to be the proud owner of a vintage set of these Ray-Ban Olympians, I'm just saying I would deeply appreciate it. There is my address right there, P.O. Box 104 in Franklin, PA. Okay. Just throwing that out there. If you were just like, I love that Gavin guy, but I just don't know what to get him. I'm telling you, a vintage set, gold over black or gold over turtle shell. I'm not that picky. I just love these G15s, and I think they should be coming back in 2026. And wouldn't they look great with that there jacket? They would, right? But anyway, thank you very much for supporting my work. A couple more things before we go. You're always cordially invited to join us over on the Fish Tank on Facebook. If you're on Facebook and that is your thing, you are cordially invited. I did post a couple things today, one of which, I need to find it. Where is it? Is our schedule for the rest of the year. We will be doing a live stream tomorrow. Christmas Eve and Christmas, we will not be live streaming. The 26th, we will be. The 29th and 30th, we will be, which is Monday, Tuesday. We will not be live streaming on December 31st, Christmas Eve. New Year's Eve or New Year's Day. So I just wanted to put that out there. Okay. With that, guys, those of you who've made it all the way to the end, you guys are awesome. I deeply, deeply appreciate you. It has been a terrific year, 2025. It has for me. I hope it has been for you. We will be back tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Eastern right here on this YouTube channel. I also post to Spotify as a podcast every single day. So go over to Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. You can listen to the audio of this live stream. And with that, thank you so much. I bid you adieu, and I will see you on the next one. Take care. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you liked what you saw, please consider subscribing. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below.